Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to start just by having you introduce yourselves, tell you a little bit about the work you're doing. We'll start with you, Maura, and then we'll go over to Dean.
Great, thanks, Gerald. Hi, everyone. It's great to see the room from this vantage point. Not that I can see any faces, but it sure looks exciting. I'm Maura Pally. I am the executive director of the Blackstone Charitable Foundation. For those of you who don't know, Blackstone is the world's largest asset management firm, and our foundation focuses on leveraging our financial and human capital to bridge opportunity gaps and address career mobility and economic opportunity. We do that really in two main ways. One is through all of our employee engagement efforts, which we have in each of our 25 global offices. We have over 80% participation across our employees, which is something we're very proud of. It really is something that is deep in the DNA of Blackstone. And then we run a signature program called Launchpad, which initially started as an entrepreneurship skills building program in over 60 colleges and universities across the US. It is evolving into a job readiness and connection to job opportunities in minority serving institutions and across the US. So I know we'll talk more about it, but it's really a pleasure to be here.
That's great. And it's fascinating because the work you're doing in Launchpad of preparing young people for careers, for access to opportunity, I think dovetails pretty well, Dean, into what Gil does for a living. You can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, Maura and I were talking like we're kind of a handshake in terms of the work that we do. I'm Dean Carter, and I'm the hi. Yoo! Those are my Gilders. So I'm the Chief People and Purpose Officer for Guild, and that's originally the title was given to me, Chief People Officer, and I said, you know what? I've been doing this job at the head of HR for 25 years, and for the first time, the purpose of the company is my purpose that I've had for my entire life, which is helping people build and grow in their career. So that's what Guild does. Guild is a 8-year-old badass startup fighter invented in that big idea by Rachel Romer, the CEO. And I've had the fortunate to work for two badass female CEOs, former Rose Marcario of Patagonia for 8 years, who's a super badass, and now Rachel Romer, who's another badass female CEO, and I'm so gifted and blessed to work with these two amazing women. So what we do is Rachel's vision is that there's a lot of people who are hardworking, and for some reason, not for some reason, very systemic reasons actually, they're challenged to move forward. And so we work with big companies, and people raise their hand to be a part of the Go program. And what we do is we provide companies like Disney, Chipotle, Tyson Foods, Providence Health, and people raise their hand and want to say, I want a better opportunity. Life's just got in the way. And we provide coaches and a whole set of support services, very specific programs that we design for them to get the skills that they need for the jobs that get them paid 2 to 3 times more than the work they were doing before. So what Guild does is take frontline, hardworking people in the cafeteria in a hospital and they become nurses. And anyone can talk about that a little later, but every single day, the stories that I hear from people that impact at Guild, with this tiny little 1,500 person company that impacted 5 million lives in America last year, I go up the stairs 2 steps at a time to do that. That's what I do.
It's fantastic. Really,
that's
really
what
good
we
work.
do.
I think a brilliant innovation for our country, what Guild has done. So hats off to all that you've done to empower others. Now, Maura, when you think about what young people need today, right, and where you started Launchpad, how it's evolved, what do our young adults need today to gain access, ultimately, to take advantage of what Guild could provide to them?
Great. It's funny to be asked these questions by Gerald, who, for those of you who don't know, is truly a visionary and a leader in this space about 20 years before everybody else got on to addressing a really systemic and cultural challenge of the gap between incredibly talented, ready and eager to work youth and jobs. And what is this space of training youth so that they can show up prepared, and also working on the employer side to make sure that the two are meeting in the middle. So, I was joking earlier, I think I could moderate a conversation with Gerald and everybody would learn so much, but truly it was the work that you did and continue to do that inspires how we think about how do you really solve for this problem. So at Blackstone, as I mentioned, we're a large asset management firm, and a huge piece of our business is private equity. So we have majority and minority ownership in over 250 portfolio companies across the world. That's a lot of jobs. So with that comes great opportunity and great responsibility on the employee front. As the Charitable Foundation head, and thinking about how can we leverage our charitable dollars and our employee time and talent, really started to think about what the need is. And in talking to students at some of our schools, including CUNY, which is a City University of New York school system. We have a number of schools from CUNY in our Launchpad network. That is a 250,000 student population. More than 60% of those students are living in households under the poverty line, and more than 40% are first-generation students. So when we went and did a listening tour, like, what do you need? We want to help you build entrepreneurship skills. Like, yeah, entrepreneurship skills are great, but what we really need is access to jobs. And we need, they weren't saying this, but employers are saying this, a little bit of additional training, because they didn't grow up with the privilege that I did, knowing how to write a resume, having people help me write a resume, having people coach me on what I do when I show up for an interview and what I do when I show up for a job. So at Launchpad, we've been gradually pivoting to really help students think about their careers, prepare them for their careers, and then open up internship opportunities at Blackstone and at our Blackstone portfolio companies, with the hope and with the data that shows that students who have internships on their resume are more likely to be called back for a second interview, and if they actually land a job, they're more likely to have higher salaries. And there is a lot of data out there that just shows internships alone can help give people a leg up to a job. But unfortunately, so many students don't have access to internships, don't know where to find it. Career services are really varying in underfunded school systems. So that's where we're really hoping to fill the gap.
And just to context, Blackstone has how many employees in total, if you count their portfolio?
About 750,000.
Right, so 750,000 folks that you can influence. And then, this is a most significant and successful financial firms in the world. Why does this matter to the firm?
Well, it's a great question, and really what led me to think about how we leverage our charitable dollars. In our portfolio operations company, my colleague Courtney De La Cava, who is here, runs a program called Career Pathways. That has absolutely nothing to do with the Charitable Foundation or charity in any way. It is a business-driven effort to make our companies more profitable and more resilient. And it's working with companies to help them think about their hiring practices, their cultural practices, with the goal of diversifying companies. So at Blackstone, we have fiduciary duties to our investors to make good returns on their investment. And so when Blackstone does something on the business side, it's doing it because it makes companies stronger and more resilient. So it's really a wonderful opportunity for us, since we have so many portfolio companies that we work very closely with, to get them in better cultural places and to adjust their hiring practices and to think differently about their workforce, that we on the foundation side can help support organizations like Year Up or Run Launchpad to make sure that there's a pipeline of diverse job-ready talent ready to take those great jobs on our portfolio side.
Love it. And Dean, obviously Gil's hugely innovative, so I bet you've learned a lot as you've started the organization and pivoted. But what are you learning? What would you want us to know about what you're learning that companies need to do, that people need as they're trying to advance their careers?
I think it starts with a fundamental understanding of the problem that needs to be solved. So fundamentally, a lot of people don't have access to the financial capital to pay for a degree in advance. You have like tuition reimbursement, but if you don't have the money up front, reimbursement isn't incredibly helpful. So that's a huge problem to access. The second thing is the problem to solve is a lot of people don't have the social capital. They don't have the networks. They don't have the understandings of even the opportunities that are available to them, because they don't have the type of social capital that maybe you and I had when we grew up. The third thing is just the level of instability that happens in people's lives around social structures, unstable housing, And challenges with transportation, a sick parent, one single event that keeps you out of the system and the process. And so there's all these people that are systemically locked out because of financial capital, social capital, and all these headwinds that are going against them. That's the problem that we're trying to solve. And what we believe, there's these incredibly talented, hardworking people who are like, can you just give me a chance? Like, I've had every single headwind blowing in my face. And how do we help with that? And that's what Guild does. Right. So if someone says, I want a chance at this, what we do is not just throw a bunch of content at them, because content is generally available. And what we've learned is that we need to, one, provide them a coach around the skills and develop a lot of stuff that you're talking about, Maura. How to interview, how to take a course, how to just get the skills that you need. And the second thing is we provide a life coach, because life gets in the way. Things happen. Parents get sick. You're dealing with childcare issues, dealing with transportation. So we do these full wraparound services that we provide for people. And what happens is they're 2 to 3 times more likely to persist in these programs. And at the end of the day, I call it a 2x2 impact. Second is they're twice as likely to get a much more high-paying job. And the second time, they're much more likely to stay with the company and persist. So what we see is that our tiny little company, 1,500 people, impacted 5 million lives last year to lift them up into opportunity they never thought was possible. So a great example of what we're doing is you have a hardworking person in a cafeteria, I mentioned, who becomes a nurse, or someone at Chipotle or Disney who's like a frontline worker in a cook, and they become a programmer. So we have very specific design pathways for them that are ready to go, not just to get a bunch of training, but the support services and very specific skills and capabilities to go into jobs that companies are looking for and need.
Right. Thank you, and I love hearing about what you do. And more, I want to talk a little bit about how you think about partnerships in trying to scale the impact you have. I mean, Blackstone's a huge organization, but I often think none of us can solve these challenges alone. So how have partnerships manifest within the work you do?
I mean, absolutely critical. One, as much as we like to think we know everything about everything, we truly don't. I mean, just going on a listening tour to the students and the schools and the employers, what do you need that you're not getting? What do you need that you're not getting? Without those partnerships and information, I can sit in my Park Avenue office and think I know the answers to things, but I truly don't. I'm not closely connected enough with the realities of what many of these students are going through and their barriers that they face. So there are tweaks that we need to make that we can only do if we have the trust of the schools that we work with, if we have the trust of the not-for-profits that we work with, because our model is we give grants to not-for-profits who already do this work and have proven track records. We're not doing the training ourselves. That's not our expertise for this population. And it truly is us coming together to figure out how to work together. And again, I think Europe was so on the front end of pairing the not-for-profit training and the employers, because it used to be the two were complaining about the other without the connectivity. And that's the true partnership, when you have the employers who are able to articulate exactly what they need, are willing to work with you and have the patience so that the potential employees are really going to be ready to hit the ground running. So I think for us, it's absolutely critical.
Right. So we couldn't have a panel today without at least one question on generative AI.
Yeah.
Which
Glad Dean gets that one.
Dean's going to get that one. But
I drew the straw.
But I mean, you're talking to companies about skills and pathways, and I'm sure the conversation's coming up of how might this impact the skills we need or the skills we train for. Can you educate us a little bit on how you're starting to think about that?
Yeah. Even before AI came up, it was a big conversation. A year ago, we weren't talking really a little bit about AI. Now it's in every conversation. But between then and now, even Korn Ferry said, if we don't do anything, there's going to be an 85 million human skilled talent shortage, regardless of AI, that's going to happen by 2030. Now, you know what 85 million is? That's the size of the entire country of Germany. Which is the largest country in Europe, even in UK, France, everywhere. That is the level of skill shortage we're having. Now let's layer on AI. I'm not an AI expert. I know that we have a lot of experts at Guild who are actually looking at this, both on the people team and on the business side. But here's what I hear, because I've done to a lot of events about this. There's this, oh my God, I talked to a CEO recently who said the end of AI is the end of us. Like it's gonna determine that human beings are horrible and blow us all up. The other option is don't worry about it, everything's gonna pay, it's gonna be just like every other innovation, it's gonna create a ton of jobs. What I really think is in the middle somewhere. It's not gonna blow us up and it's not gonna create a ton of jobs. Or what I do think is somewhere in the middle, all of our work is gonna change. And I think you're already experiencing some change in work. For example, HR business partners, the ability to write a job description pretty quick is about a 3-hour time, changed to about 15 minutes and a little bit of tweak. And I think we need to set models for doing this. So at Guild, the way we're looking at it, and the team has set up a great model to go, okay, first you want to think about it like, what's the easy things to do that are no harm? What's a little bit of harm and go to here? What's the scary stuff that we need to start putting rules around and don't touch this? So this is the model we're thinking about for AI for us and potentially our partners. And I think that's how we need to think about it. Who knows what the heck? Humans are terrible at predicting change, by the way, horrible at it.
Right.
So like, I'm going to be a horrible human and not be able to predict. So
I was surprised when I was using ChatGPT-4 and my son looked at me and just smiled. You know when your children look at you like a boomer?
yeah.
And they're like, wow, you are so out of step. He's like, I use that every day. I've used it every day for 6 months. As long as it's about,
so true.
You're too old to keep up, Dad. I'm trying.
Is he on 5 already?
Yeah, he's moving. Maura, last closing thoughts before we finish up today.
I think it would just really be around partnerships and listening, humility, patience, and tenacity. Like these problems that we're facing, whether it's AI or how to close these opportunity gaps, are so enormous and overwhelming that the only way we'll make progress is if we come together, listen, and are patient and humble in trying to move the needle forward and not get too frustrated when it doesn't all happen quickly.
Right. Dean, final thoughts?
I think we need to think about systems and structures. So to make change, we have to change the systems. That's what we do at Guild, is break the systems. But the other system I need to think about, and those of you in HR, we're still using the titles and system structures that we were given 50 years ago. At Guild, we have a chief opportunity officer whose only role is to help people get from here. We have a head of agility and outcomes who makes sure you crush it at the job today. And 3 years from now, when things change for AI, we have a job for you too. So they're futurist in thinking. And the third thing is talent acquisition. What does that mean? Just always acquiring talent? Like the very title, talent acquisition, says you always get talent outside. It's about talent curation, and we need to think about these structures and systems that even in HR we're using today. We need to bust them down to the jobs to be done and bust down systems and rethink. We're still using systems and structures from 1950, and we need to be contemporary and think about how these things, that's how we make change.
I love it. Thank you to you both.
Thank
Maura,
you.
Dean, I appreciate it.